Most legends of power begin with submission, but Kaelin's story began with defiance. Not rebellion born of anger, not pride that demanded recognition, just the straightening of her spine and the lifting of her chin as she chose, at the age of 15, to remain standing when an entire kingdom fell to its knees. For 8 years, she never bowed. Not once. And in those 8 years spent in the shadow of the Crimson Throne, she became something far more dangerous than any warrior or mage. She became the one thing an Alpha King could never ignore, an Omega who refused to kneel. The scarlet moon rose over the kingdom of Valdris, like a wound in the sky, bathing the assembled crowd in crimson light. Kaelen stood among thousands in the grand courtyard of the Obsidian Palace, her threadbare cloak doing little to ward off the autumn chill. Around her, nobles in silk and servants in wool alike shifted nervously, all eyes fixed on the massive obsidian doors at the courtyard's far end. Tonight was the blood tithe. The night when every Omega in the kingdom was required to present themselves before Alpha King Theron Ashenfell for inspection and selection. Some would be chosen for palace service, others for noble houses, a rare few for the king's personal guard, and one, if the rumors held true, would be chosen as a potential mate. Kaelen had no interest in any of it. She had come only because failure to appear meant death. Not just for her, but for the 5 people who depended on her survival. 5 souls trapped in a curse so vile that even speaking of it could draw unwanted attention. The obsidian doors swung open with a sound like thunder. Silence crashed over the courtyard as Alpha King Theron emerged, flanked by his Bloodguard elite warriors, whose red cloaks marked them as extensions of the king's will. Even from this distance, Kaelen could feel the weight of his presence, the raw dominance that radiated from him like heat from a forge. He was everything the stories claimed, tall and broad-shouldered, with midnight black hair that fell to his collar and eyes the color of molten amber. Power moved through him with predatory grace, and when he surveyed the crowd, hardened warriors dropped their gazes. Citizens of Valdris. His voice carried across the courtyard without strain, rich and commanding. Tonight, as tradition demands, you will show your loyalty to the Crimson Throne. When I give the command, you will kneel. Those who refuse. He paused, letting the implication hang in the air. Will be removed. Kaelen's fingers curled into fists beneath her cloak. She knew what was coming, had prepared herself for this moment every day for the past 8 years. Kneel, Theron commanded. The sound was like a wave breaking, thousands of people dropping to their knees in perfect synchronization, foreheads touching stone in absolute submission. The dominant alpha pheromones washing over the crowd made it nearly impossible to resist, especially for Omegas, whose instincts screamed to submit, to please, to obey. Kaelen felt it. The biological imperative that tried to drag her down. Her knees trembled with the effort of resistance. Her wolf whined inside her, confused by her refusal to submit to such overwhelming alpha authority. But she remained standing. Around her, heads stayed bowed. No one dared look up. No one dared witness what she was doing. The space around her seemed to expand, as if even the air itself recoiled from her defiance. Silence stretched. Then, cutting through it like a blade, came the Alpha King's voice, soft and deadly. You, the Omega in the gray cloak. Kaelen's heart hammered against her ribs. But she didn't move, didn't kneel, didn't lower her eyes. Instead, she raised her chin and met the Alpha King's gaze directly. Amber eyes locked with storm-gray ones across the crowded courtyard. For one breathless moment, the world seemed to stop. Then Theron Ashenfell did something no one expected. He smiled. Not the cold smile of a king about to execute an insolent subject, but something far more dangerous. Something predatory and intrigued. Bring her to me, he commanded. I would know the name of the Omega brave enough or foolish enough to defy her king. The Bloodguard moved through the crowd like crimson shadows. Kaelen didn't run. There was nowhere to run to. Instead, she stood perfectly still as they surrounded her, their hands gripping her arms with bruising force. As they dragged her forward through the sea of kneeling bodies, toward the Alpha King, who watched her approach with undisguised fascination, Kaelen thought of the 5 she protected, of the curse that bound them, of the 8 years she had already sacrificed. And she thought, just 8 more months. Hold on for 8 more months and they'll be free, even if it cost her everything. The Bloodguard released Kaelen at the base of the obsidian steps, where the Alpha King stood, watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Up close, Theron Ashenfell was even more imposing, easily a head taller than her, with a presence that seemed to consume all the air in the courtyard. "Your name," he said, his voice carrying a command that made every Omega instinct in her body scream to comply. Kaelen's jaw tightened. She had prepared for this. For 8 years, she had rehearsed every possible scenario. "Kaelen Stormborn," she said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her limbs. "Stormborn." Theron descended 2 steps, closing the distance between them. His scent washed over her pine smoke and winter frost. Devastatingly, Alpha, an interesting surname for an Omega who refuses to bow. "Tell me, Kaelen Stormborn, do you know the penalty for defying your king?" "Death, your majesty." She kept her chin raised, even as her heart threatened to pound out of her chest. A murmur rippled through the crowd at her audacity. No one spoke so directly to the Alpha King, certainly no Omega. Theron's amber eyes narrowed, studying her face as if trying to solve a puzzle. "Death," he repeated slowly. "And yet you stand before me, unbowed and unrepentant. Why?" "Because if I kneel, if I submit to any Alpha's dominance, the binding spell will break," Kaelen thought, "and my siblings will remain trapped forever." But she couldn't say that. Couldn't reveal the truth about the curse that had transformed her 5 younger siblings into shadow wraiths 8 years ago, condemned to exist as incorporeal beings until she could gather enough moonstone dust to complete the reversal ritual. The curse had one cruel condition: she could never submit to an Alpha's will. Not through word, not through action, not through the instinctive submission that all Omegas were born with. One moment of submission, and the curse would become permanent. "I mean no disrespect to the crown," Kaelen said carefully, "but I cannot kneel." "Cannot?" Theron's eyebrow arched. "Or will not? Does the distinction matter?" The courtyard went deathly silent. Even the Bloodguard shifted uncomfortably. No one questioned the Alpha King. For a long moment, Theron simply stared at her. Then, to everyone's shock, he threw back his head and laughed, a rich, genuine sound that echoed off the palace walls. "Bold," he said, his eyes gleaming with something dangerous and interested. "Foolish, but bold." He circled her slowly, and Kaelen forced herself not to track his movement. To show fear now would be fatal. "You intrigue me, Kaelen Stormborn," Theron continued. "An Omega who resists Alpha command should be impossible. The biology alone makes it nearly unthinkable, and yet here you stand." He stopped directly in front of her again. "I find myself curious about you, and I always investigate things that pique my curiosity." Kaelen's stomach dropped. "Your Majesty, you will serve in the palace," he interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. "As my personal attendant, close enough that I might unravel the mystery you present." Horror flooded through her. "I'm not qualified." "I didn't ask." His voice dropped to a lethal whisper. "You have 2 choices, Kaelen Stormborn. Accept this position, or face execution for your defiance. Which will it be?" Kaelen's mind raced. Serving the Alpha King directly meant constant exposure to his dominance, his commands, his overwhelming presence. It meant 1,000 opportunities for him to accidentally trigger her submission instinct. One slip, and her siblings would be lost forever. But death meant they would be trapped regardless, with no one to complete the ritual. "I accept," she forced out, the words tasting like ash. Theron smiled, that same predatory expression from before. "Excellent, Commander Veyron. See that Miss Stormborn is given appropriate quarters near my chambers. She begins her duties tomorrow." As the crowd was dismissed and people slowly rose from their kneeling positions, Kaelen felt the weight of thousands of stares. She had done the impossible, defied the Alpha King and lived. But as she was led away by the crimson-cloaked guards, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just walked into a trap far more dangerous than execution. Behind her, Theron watched her retreating form with undisguised interest. His wolf stirred inside him, pressing against his consciousness with an insistence he hadn't felt in years. Mine, it whispered. Ours. Theron silenced it with practiced ease. The Omega was interesting, certainly. A puzzle worth solving, but nothing more. He was wrong, though he wouldn't realize it until much later. The moment their eyes had met across the courtyard, something ancient and irrevocable had clicked into place. The bond had already begun. Kaelen's new quarters were far nicer than anywhere she'd lived in 8 years. A small chamber adjacent to the servants' wing, with an actual bed instead of a straw pallet, a wash basin with clean water, and a window overlooking the palace gardens. It felt like a gilded cage. She waited until the palace settled into sleep before slipping out. The guard rotations were predictable. She'd observed them during her previous visits to the palace kitchens, where she'd worked occasional shifts to earn coin. Now she moved through the shadows with practiced silence, avoiding the torchlight that would reveal her. The Whispering Grove lay at the far edge of the palace grounds, where the manicured gardens gave way to wild forest. Here, ancient trees grew so thick that even moonlight struggled to penetrate their canopy. It was the one place on the palace grounds where the veil between worlds grew thin enough for her to contact her siblings. Kaelen knelt at the base of the oldest oak, pulling a small leather pouch from inside her bodice. Moonstone, dust 3 years' worth of careful collection, ground from stones she'd traded for, stolen, or found in forgotten places. She poured a pinch onto the ground and whispered the words her grandmother had taught her before the curse took her too. By shadow and starlight, by blood and bone, I call to those who once were whole. The air shimmered. 5 translucent forms materialized around her, barely visible even in the darkness. Her siblings, Lyris, her eldest sister who had been 18 when the curse struck, the twins, Darian and Alara, 16 at the time, young Orin, just 14, and little Senna, who had been only 10 years old when she'd lost her solid form. Kai. Lyris's voice was barely a whisper on the wind. You're well? For now. Kaelen reached out, her hand passing through Lyris's translucent shoulder. 8 years, and the inability to touch them still brought tears to her eyes. But there's been a complication. She explained about the blood tithe, her refusal to kneel, and Theron's command that she serve as his personal attendant. Darian's shade flickered with agitation. That's too dangerous, Kai. An Alpha King? His dominance will be impossible to resist at close quarters. I know, Kaelen said quietly. But what choice did I have? You could have knelt, Alara said softly. We would have understood. No. Kaelen's voice was sharp. 8 years, Alara. 8 years of collecting moonstone dust, and I'm finally close to enough. The ritual requires dust from 100 moonstones, ground to powder and mixed with the blood of the one who bears the curse. I have 97. Just 3 more stones, and you'll all be free. Her voice broke slightly. I won't give up now. I won't lose you. What about the king? Orin asked, his young voice holding a wisdom beyond his frozen years. If you're serving him directly, how will you continue gathering stones? How will you avoid submitting when he commands you? Those were the questions keeping Kaelen awake at night. I'll find a way, she said with more confidence than she felt. I always do. Senna's small form drifted closer. We miss you, Kai. It's so cold here, between worlds. So lonely. Kaelen's heart clenched. I know, little storm. Just a few more months. I promise. The moonstone dust's power began to fade, and her siblings' forms grew more translucent. Be careful. Lyris warned as she disappeared. Alpha Kings don't take interest in Omegas for no reason. Whatever game he's playing, don't let him win. Then they were gone, leaving Kaelen alone in the darkness. She stayed there for a long moment, letting the tears finally fall. 8 years of this. 8 years of watching her siblings exist as ghosts, while she scraped and struggled to break a curse that should never have been cast. Their parents had been healers, well respected in their village. But when a plague swept through Valdris, and the local lord's son died despite their efforts, they'd been accused of witchcraft. The trial had been swift and merciless. Her parents were executed, and in a final act of cruelty, the lord's wife who dabbled in dark magic had cursed the Stormborn children. "Let them fade to nothing," the woman had hissed, as guards dragged Kaelen's parents away. "Let them exist between life and death, forgotten by the world, until someone loves them enough to sacrifice everything." Kaelen had been that someone. At 15, she'd become the anchor point for the curse, the only one who remained solid while her siblings faded. And she'd discovered that the curse had conditions: complete the Moonstone ritual, and never submit to alpha dominance. Break either rule, and the curse became permanent. The sound of footsteps made her freeze. Someone was approaching through the gardens. Kaelen quickly wiped her tears and pressed herself against the oak's trunk, barely breathing. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, unmistakable, even in darkness. Alpha King Theron stood at the edge of the grove, his amber eyes seeming to glow in the faint moonlight. He was looking directly at her hiding spot. "I can hear your heartbeat, little Omega," he said softly. "Come out." Kaelen's blood turned to ice. How long had he been watching? What had he seen? Slowly, she stepped into the open, her mind racing through possible explanations. Theron's gaze swept over her tear-stained face, then to the spot where her siblings had been. "Interesting place for a midnight walk," he observed. "Tell me, Kaelen Stormborn, what brings you to the Whispering Grove at this hour? And why do you weep in the darkness, alone?" Kaelen's mind scrambled for a plausible lie, but Theron's amber eyes seemed to see straight through her. The Alpha King moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the confined space of the grove. The scent, that intoxicating mix of pine smoke and winter frost, wrapped around her like a living thing. "I asked you a question," he said, his voice deceptively gentle. "I expect an answer." Every Omega instinct screamed at her to submit, to tell him everything, to obey. Kaelen bit the inside of her cheek until she tasted blood, using the pain to anchor herself against the biological imperative. "I couldn't sleep," she said, keeping her voice steady. "The palace is overwhelming. I needed air." "So you wandered to the most remote corner of the grounds?" Theron's head tilted slightly. "Past 3 guard posts, and through gardens you couldn't possibly know the layout of, having arrived only hours ago?" He took another step forward. "Try again. And this time, don't insult my intelligence." Kaelen's back hit the oak tree. "Trapped. I used to work in the palace kitchens occasionally," she said, grasping at partial truths. "I knew this place was quiet, private." Theron braced one hand against the tree trunk beside her head, leaning in close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "And the tears? The whispered words I heard as I approached? Just a few more months, you said. A few more months until what, Kaelen?" Her heart hammered. He'd heard. Gods, how much had he heard? "Personal matters, Your Majesty. Nothing that concerns the crown." "Everything in my kingdom concerns me," Theron countered. "Especially mysterious Omegas, who can resist Alpha, command a biological impossibility, and who sneak into forbidden groves to conduct what sounded remarkably like ritual. Magic." His eyes narrowed. "Who are you really, Kaelen Stormborn? And what are you hiding?" "Nothing," she lied, knowing it was futile. "I'm no one. Just an Omega trying to survive." Liar. The word was soft but devastating. Theron's free hand came up to cup her chin, forcing her to maintain eye contact. The touch sent electricity racing through her body, and she hated herself for the way her breath caught. "I can smell the lies on you." Fear, desperation, and something else. Something. He paused, his expression shifting to confusion. Something that makes my wolf go absolutely mad. Kaelen felt it too, that inexplicable pull between them, like a rope tightening around her chest. The mate bond. She'd heard of it, the legendary connection that sometimes formed between alphas and omegas, but she'd never experienced it, never wanted to. The bond would make everything so much worse. Your Majesty, please. Theron? He interrupted, tired. When we're alone, you'll call me Theron. That's inappropriate. Do you know what I think? Theron continued as if she hadn't spoken. I think you're running from something, or protecting something. You have the eyes of someone carrying an unbearable weight. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, wiping away a tear she didn't realize had fallen. Let me help you. The offer was so unexpected, so genuine, that Kaelen almost broke. Almost told him everything about the curse, her siblings, the moonstone ritual, but then reality crashed back. If she told him, he would try to help. And his help would mean investigating the curse, which would draw attention to her siblings. Attention from those who might seek to exploit them, or worse, finish what the Lord's wife had started. Besides, in 8 more months, it wouldn't matter. She'd complete the ritual, free her siblings, and disappear into obscurity where she belonged. The Alpha King would forget about the strange Omega, who'd briefly caught his interest. Even if the thought of him forgetting her sent an unexpected lance of pain through her chest. There's nothing you can help with, Your Majesty. Persend, she said, injecting steel into her voice. I appreciate the concern, but I'm fine. Theron's expression hardened. Back to formality then. He didn't move away, keeping her pinned between his body and the tree. Very well, but understand this, Kaelen Stormborn. You are now under my personal protection. Whatever secrets you carry, whatever danger stalks you, you are mine to guard. I don't need protection. That wasn't a request. His alpha command rolled over her like a physical force, and she had to dig her nails into her palms to resist the urge to bare her throat in submission. You will report to my chambers at dawn. You will perform your duties as my attendant without complaint, and you will not, under any circumstances, sneak into forbidden groves alone at night again. Am I understood? Am I understood? Kaelen gritted her teeth. Yes, Your Majesty. Good. Theron finally stepped back, giving her space to breathe. Commander Veyron will escort you back to your quarters. We wouldn't want you getting lost in the overwhelming palace, would we? As if summoned, the commander of the Blood Guard materialized from the shadows. Veyron was a tall, severe woman with silver-streaked hair and calculating eyes. She bowed to Theron, then gestured curtly for Kaelen to follow. As Kaelen walked away, she could feel Theron's gaze burning into her back. She'd just made a powerful enemy, or something far more dangerous than an enemy. She'd caught the Alpha King's interest, confusion. Behind her, Theron remained in the grove long after she'd gone, his wolf pacing restlessly inside him. The Omega confused him, fascinated him, called to something primal in his very soul. Problem, Your Majesty? Veyron had returned after depositing Kaelen at her quarters. Tell me everything you can find about someone named Kaelen Stormborn, Theron ordered. Family history, known associates, where she's been living, everything. Shall I be discreet? Theron considered. No, let her know I'm investigating. Perhaps it will encourage her to come clean before I uncover whatever she's hiding. As he walked back to the palace, Theron tried to convince himself his interest was purely practical, a security concern. An Omega who could resist Alpha Command was dangerous, potentially unstable. But he couldn't quite silence his wolf's insistent whisper. Mate. Find her. Claim her. Keep her. It was going to be a long 8 months. Dawn arrived too quickly. Kaelen stood outside the Alpha King's private chambers, her hands trembling slightly as she smoothed down the gray servant's dress she'd been given. It was simple but well made, far nicer than anything she'd owned in years. The massive oak doors swung open before she could knock. A young man with dark hair and an easy smile stood in the doorway, his beta scent marking him as someone of middling rank. You must be the famous Omega who refused to kneel, he said with obvious amusement. I'm Riven, the king's personal secretary. Fair warning. He's in a spectacularly foul mood this morning. Barely slept, snapped at 3 guards, and threw a boot at a servant who brought lukewarm coffee. Wonderful, Kaelen muttered. Riven's grin widened. Oh, I like you already. Come on, the beast awaits. He led her through an antechamber into the king's private study, a massive room lined with books, maps, and weapons. Theron sat behind an enormous desk, still dressed in sleep clothes with his shirt unlaced, revealing a disturbing amount of muscled chest. His hair was disheveled, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He looked up as she entered, and something flickered across his face. Relief? Hunger? It was gone before she could identify it. Leave us, Riven, Theron said without preamble. Gladly. I value my neck unbroken. Riven beat a hasty retreat, closing the doors behind him. Silence stretched between them. Kaelen kept her eyes downcast, studying the intricate carpet pattern. Look at me. The command in his voice was undeniable. Kaelen's head snapped up before she could stop herself, and she immediately regretted it. Those amber eyes seemed to see everything. Better, Theron said, leaning back in his chair. Your duties are simple. You'll attend to my personal needs, meals, correspondence, maintaining my chambers. You'll accompany me to official functions where I require assistance, and you'll be available whenever I summon you. His lips quirked. Think you can manage that without defying me at every turn? I'll do my best, Your Majesty. Pulse. Somehow, I doubt that. He stood, moving around the desk with that predatory grace that made her pulse quicken. I had Veyron investigate you last night. Kaelen's stomach dropped. And you're remarkably difficult to trace. Kaelen Stormborn appears in records about 8 years ago, working odd jobs throughout Valdris. Before that? He shrugged. Nothing. It's as if you materialized from thin air at age 15. Because she had, in a way. The curse had forced them to flee their village, to hide their identities. She'd taken the surname Stormborn on a whim, based on her grandmother's old nickname for her. Some of us don't have the luxury of documented lineages, she said carefully. True. But most people have something. Family, friends, a place they call home. Theron stopped directly in front of her. You have none of those things. Why? I prefer solitude. Another lie. He reached out, and Kaelen forced herself not to flinch as his fingers caught a strand of her dark hair, covered in them like armor. But I'm a patient man, Kaelen. Eventually, you'll trust me enough to tell the truth. Don't hold your breath, Your Majesty. His laugh was low and dangerous. There she is, the defiant Omega with fire in her eyes. His hand dropped away. Come. Come. I have a council meeting in an hour, and I need to look like a king rather than someone who spent the night hunting ghosts in his own gardens. The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Kaelen learned quickly that serving the Alpha King meant constant motion, preparing his formal attire, organizing correspondence, deflecting unwanted visitors. Theron had a sharp tongue and little patience for incompetence, but she noticed he never directed his anger at those who couldn't defend themselves. His sharpest barbs were reserved for pompous nobles and his own commanders. By mid-afternoon, she'd accompanied him to 2 council meetings, 3 audiences with visiting dignitaries, and a training session with his elite guards. Through it all, she felt his eyes on her watching, analyzing, trying to solve the puzzle she represented. It was exhausting. You're doing well, Riven whispered to her during a brief respite, while Theron met with his war council. Most new attendants are in tears by now. He's not an easy man to serve. He's not as terrible as he pretends to be, Kaelen said, surprising herself with the observation. Riven's eyebrows rose. Careful, that almost sounded like you don't hate him. Did she hate Theron? The question troubled her more than it should. He was arrogant, commanding, infuriatingly protective. But he was also fair, protective of those weaker than himself, and carried the weight of an entire kingdom on his shoulders without complaint. She didn't hate him. That was the problem. The day's final task brought her to Theron's private chambers, as evening fell. She was meant to prepare his rooms for the night, lighting the fire, laying out sleeping clothes, ensuring everything was in order. She'd just finished when Theron entered, looking exhausted. He dismissed the guards outside with a wave, leaving them alone. Process. Wine, he ordered, gesturing to the decanter on the side table. Kaelen poured 2 glasses and brought them over. Theron took one, then indicated she should keep the other. Sit with me, he said, moving to the chairs by the fire. Please. Please. The please surprised her. She sat, perching on the edge of the chair, ready to bolt. Theron studied her over his wine glass. You're still afraid of me. You're the Alpha King. I'd be a fool not to be wary. Wary is different from afraid. He set his glass down. I need you to understand something, Kaelen. Whatever secrets you carry, whatever past you're running from, I have no intention of using them against you. My interest in you is... He paused, seeming to struggle for words. Personal. Personal. Kaelen's mouth went dry. Your Majesty. My wolf recognizes you, he said bluntly. From the moment our eyes met in that courtyard, something in me shifted. It's maddening. I barely know you, and yet I can't stop thinking about you. Can't stop wanting to protect you, possess you, know every secret you hide behind those storm-gray eyes. The mate bond. He felt it too. That's just biology, Kaelen said, her voice barely steady. Pheromones. It will pass. Will it? Theron leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Because it's never happened before. In 32 years, I've met thousands of Omegas. None of them have ever made my wolf react like this. None of them have ever made me feel like I'm missing a part of my own soul. Kaelen couldn't breathe. This was dangerous territory. If she acknowledged the bond, if she let herself feel what her wolf was begging her to feel, everything would unravel. I can't, she whispered. Your Majesty, I can't give you what you want. Why not? Because I have obligations, responsibilities to people who depend on me. She stood abruptly, comment. If there's nothing else, I should go. Theron rose as well, blocking her path. One more thing. He reached out slowly, giving her time to move away. When she didn't, his hand cupped her cheek. Whatever burden you carry, you don't have to carry it alone. I meant what I said. You're under my protection now. That means something. The gentleness in his touch, in his voice, nearly broke her. Kaelen closed her eyes against the sudden sting of tears. Thank you, Your Majesty, she managed. But some burdens can't be shared. She pulled away before he could respond and fled the room, her heart racing. Behind her, Theron stood alone by the fire, his wolf howling inside him. It had been one day. Just one day. And already she'd gotten under his skin in a way no one ever had. 8 months suddenly seemed like an eternity. 3 weeks passed in a careful dance of proximity and distance. Kaelen performed her duties flawlessly, anticipating Theron's needs before he voiced them. She learned his preferences, how he took his coffee, which reports he prioritized, when his patience wore thin. She became indispensable, and torturously aware of him. Every accidental touch sent electricity through her. Every time his voice dropped to that low, intimate register, her Omega instinct screamed at her to submit, to please, to offer herself. She fought it constantly, using every mental trick her grandmother had taught her. But the mate bond grew stronger daily. Theron, for his part, seemed determined to slowly dismantle her defenses. He didn't pressure her or use his alpha authority. Instead, he showed her glimpses of the man beneath the crown, sharing dry observations about pompous nobles, asking her opinion on kingdom matters, telling stories of his childhood that made her laugh despite herself. You have a beautiful laugh, he said one evening as they shared a late dinner in his chambers. It had become their ritual after the palace settled into sleep. She would join him for a quiet meal. You should do it more often. I don't have much to laugh about, Your Majesty. Theron, he corrected for the 100th time. When we're alone, call me Theron. That would be inappropriate. So is most of what I want to do with you. His amber eyes held wicked promise. Call me by my name, Kaelen. Please, please did it. Theron? She whispered, testing the name on her tongue. His reaction was immediate and visceral. His pupils dilated, his breathing quickened, and his scent intensified until it wrapped around her like a physical embrace. Again, he commanded, voice rough. Theron. He was out of his chair and beside her in an instant, pulling her to her feet. Do you have any idea what you do to me? His hands framed her face. What it costs me to keep my distance when every instinct I have screams to claim you. Kaelen trembled in his grasp. We can't. I know. His forehead touched hers. You've made that abundantly clear. But gods, Kaelen, I'm trying to be patient, trying to give you space, and it's killing me. I'm sorry, she breathed. I never meant to. Don't apologize for existing. His thumb traced her lower lip. Just tell me one thing. Do you feel it too? This pull between us? Honesty forced its way out. Yes. Thank the gods. He exhaled shakily. I was beginning to think I was losing my mind. His hands slid down to grip her waist. Can I kiss you? Just once. I swear I won't push for more, but I need to know if this is real. Every rational thought told her to refuse. But her wolf was howling for him, and her own traitorous heart wanted nothing more than to close the distance between them. Once, she agreed. Theron's kiss was reverent at first soft, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But when she melted against him, her hands fisting in his shirt, the kiss deepened into something desperate and consuming. He tasted like wine and wildness, like every fantasy she'd tried not to have. His hands tightened on her waist, pulling her flush against his body, and Kaelen couldn't suppress the small sound that escaped her throat. The sound seemed to break something in Theron. He spun them, pressing her against the wall as the kiss turned fierce. One hand tangled in her hair, while the other slid down to hitch her leg around his hip, bringing them closer still. Kaelen's head spun. This was dangerous. Every touch, every caress pushed her closer to that edge, where submission and desire blurred together. If she gave in, if she let herself submit to the pleasure he offered, the curse, her siblings, 8 months of work undone. She pushed against his chest. Stop. Not. Theron froze immediately, stepping back with his chest heaving. Did I hurt you? No. She couldn't meet his eyes. We can't do this. Why not? Frustration leaked into his voice. And don't tell me it's because of rank or propriety. I'm the king. I can change any law that stands between us. It's not that simple. Then explain it to me. His hand shot out to brace against the wall beside her head. Give me something, Kaelen. Anything. Because I'm drowning here, and you won't throw me a rope. She wanted to tell him. Gods, how she wanted to share the burden. But the words stuck in her throat, trapped behind 8 years of secrecy and fear. I can't, she whispered finally. Please don't ask me to. Theron's jaw clenched. For a long moment he simply stared at her. Then he straightened, his expression closing off. Very well. If you won't trust me with the truth, then we maintain our distance. Purely professional from now on. No more dinners, no more conversations, no more. His gesture encompassed the space between them. This. And the withdrawal hurt more than it should. Theron, you're dismissed, he said coldly. I won't require your services for the rest of the evening. Kaelen fled before the tears could fall. She made it to the Whispering Grove, before she broke down completely. Her siblings materialized around her, drawn by her distress. Kai, what happened? Lyris asked, her translucent form hovering close. Through sobs, Kaelen explained about the mate bond, the kiss, Theron's demand for truth. Why don't you tell him? Darian asked gently. Maybe he could help. No. Kaelen's vehemence startled them all. You don't understand. If anyone knows about you, they become a threat. The curse stipulates that the bearer must act alone. Any help negates the ritual. She'd spent years researching the curse's conditions. Besides, if Theron tries to interfere with his alpha authority, I might be forced to submit. One moment of submission to an alpha, and you're trapped forever. So, you're just gonna break both your hearts to save us? Senna's small voice was heartbreaking. Yes. Kaelen wiped her tears. Because you're worth it. You've always been worth it. What she didn't tell them was how much harder it was getting. How the mate bond pulled at her constantly. How Theron's scent haunted her dreams. How she ached for his touch. 8 more months. She just had to survive 8 more months. But when she returned to her quarters later that night, she found something on her pillow. A single white rose, with a note in Theron's bold handwriting. I'll wait. However long it takes, whatever secrets you harbor, I'll be here when you're ready. T. Kaelen clutched the rose to her chest and cried herself to sleep. The fragile peace lasted exactly 5 days. Kaelen was arranging Theron's correspondence when the announcement came. Her Grace, Lady Morvain of House Ashgrave, requests an audience with His Majesty. Theron looked up from the battle reports he'd been reviewing. Morvain? His expression darkened. What does that viper want? Riven poked his head through the door. Should I tell her you're indisposed? No. Theron stood, straightening his formal jacket. Better to face her directly. Kaelen, you'll attend this meeting. Is that wise, Your Majesty? Riven asked. Lady Morvain has a reputation for— I know exactly what she has a reputation for, Theron interrupted, which is why I want a witness I trust. 20 minutes later, Kaelen stood slightly behind Theron's chair in the formal receiving room. When Lady Morvain entered, Kaelen's blood ran cold. The woman was stunning, tall and elegant, with silver blonde hair and violet eyes that seemed to see too much. She moved with predatory grace, her expensive silk gown leaving little to the imagination. But it was her scent that made Kaelen's wolf recoil. Dark magic, barely masked by expensive perfume. Your Majesty. Morvain's curtsy was perfect, her smile warm. Thank you for seeing me, Lady Morvain. Theron's tone was cordial but cool. What brings you to the capital? Can't an old friend visit without ulterior motive? She settled into a chair without being invited, her gaze flickering to Kaelen. Though I see you've acquired a new attendant. And so, I see you've acquired a new attendant, however. The pause before attendant was deliberate, laden with implication. Miss Stormborn serves the crown admirably, Theron said. Now, your business? Morvain's smile didn't waver. Always so direct. Very well. I come with a proposal, an alliance between House Ashgrave and the crown, through marriage. Kaelen's heart stopped. Theron's expression remained neutral. Marriage. Indeed. Morvain leaned forward, her posture calculated to display her assets. My house controls the southern trade routes and the richest moonstone mines in Valdris. An alliance would bring considerable wealth to the crown's coffers. My house controls the Dezelis moonstone mines. Kaelen's hands clenched behind her back. She needed 3 more moonstones to complete the ritual, and finding them had been increasingly difficult, prohibitive. The few remaining sources were heavily guarded or prohibitively expensive. The crown's finances are secure, Theron said flatly. I have no need of your moonstones. Perhaps not. Morvain's violet eyes glittered. But you do need heirs, Your Majesty. You're 32 and unwed. The council grows restless, whispering about succession. I could provide you with strong alpha offspring and political stability. And. I appreciate the offer, but I must decline. You haven't even considered it, Morvain pressed, her voice taking on a melodic quality that made Kaelen's skin crawl. Compulsion magic. Subtle but present. Surely you can see the benefits. My bloodline is impeccable, my connections vast. I could be quite useful to you. Oh. Theron's jaw tightened. My answer remains no, Lady Morvain. Now, if there's nothing else. There is, actually. Morvain's gaze locked onto Kaelen with laser focus. Your attendant. She's quite unusual for an Omega, isn't she? Most can barely stand in the presence of Alpha authority, yet she seems remarkably resistant. Warning bells screamed in Kaelen's head. Miss Stormborn's capabilities are none of your concern, Theron said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. Oh, but they are. Morvain stood, circling closer to Kaelen. You see, I've made quite a study of unusual Omegas over the years. Particularly those who display impossible resistances to Alpha command. She tilted her head. Tell me, dear, how does one develop such remarkable control? Is it training, bloodline, or perhaps, her eyes narrowed. A curse? Kaelen's heart hammered, but she kept her expression blank. That's enough, Theron growled, rising from his chair. You will not interrogate my staff. Curious. Morvain stepped back, her smile sharpening. Such a protective response over a mere servant. One might think there's more to this arrangement than professional duty. One would be wise to keep their speculation to themselves, Theron said coldly. Guards, escort Lady Morvain to the guest wing. She'll be leaving tomorrow morning. So soon? Morvain's laugh was musical and chilling. Very well, Your Majesty. But know this, I always get what I want, one way or another. Her gaze slid to Kaelen. Do give my regards to your siblings, Miss Stormborn. All 5 of them. The world tilted. Kaelen barely maintained her composure as guards escorted Morvain out. The moment the door closed, Theron was at her side. Kaelen, what did she mean about your siblings? I thought you had no family. I don't, Kaelen forced out. She's playing games. She knew their exact number. His hands gripped her shoulders, and she mentioned a curse. What aren't you telling me? Kaelen pulled away. I need to go. No. Theron blocked her exit. Not this time. That woman is dangerous, Kaelen, found. If she knows something about you, something that could be used as leverage, it's none of your concern. The hell it isn't. His alpha authority blazed through the room. You're under my protection, which means your enemies are my enemies. Now tell me the truth, or so help me. You'll what? Kaelen's own anger rose to meet his. Command me to speak? Force submission? That's exactly what I can't let happen. The admission hung between them. Theron's eyes widened in understanding. The curse, he said slowly. It has conditions, and one of them involves submission to Alpha authority, doesn't it? Kaelen's silence was answer enough. Gods. Theron ran a hand through his hair. That's why you refuse to kneel. Why you fight your instincts constantly. You're not just stubborn, you're protecting someone. 5 someones, Kaelen whispered, the truth finally spilling out. My siblings, they're cursed, trapped between life and death. The only way to break it requires me to complete a ritual and never submit to Alpha dominance. If I submit even once, they're lost forever. Theron stared at her for a long moment. Then, very deliberately, he took a step back and lowered his head in a gesture of respect. Then I swear to you, Kaelen Stormborn, that I will never use my Alpha authority to compel you. Never issue a command you cannot refuse. Whatever this ritual requires, I'll help you complete it. Tears burned her eyes. You can't help. The curse stipulates I must act alone. Then I'll provide resources without interfering directly. Moonstone dust, protection, whatever you need. His amber eyes blazed with determination. But I won't stand by while Morvain threatens you. She's dangerous, Kaelen warned. If she knows about the curse, she'll try to exploit it. Let her try. Theron's smile was predatory. She's forgotten that I'm rather dangerous myself. That night, Kaelen couldn't sleep. Lady Morvain's words echoed in her mind. I always get what I want, one way or another. She slipped out of bed and made her way to the Whispering Grove, needing to warn her siblings about this new threat. But when she arrived at the ancient oak, something was wrong. The air felt thick, oppressive. The moonlight that usually illuminated the grove was dimmed, as if filtered through smoke. Lyris? She called softly, pouring moonstone dust onto the ground. Darian? Anyone? Nothing. Her siblings didn't appear. Panic seized her. She poured more dust, speaking the summoning words with increasing desperation. Still nothing. They can't hear you, Kaelen. Spun to find Lady Morvain emerging from the shadows, her violet eyes glowing with dark magic. What have you done? Kaelen demanded. Simply placed a small barrier between you and your dear siblings, Morvain said pleasantly. Nothing permanent. Yet, consider it. Incentive for us to have a frank conversation. Kaelin's hand instinctively moved to the knife she'd started carrying since Morvain's visit. If you hurt them, I won't. Not if you cooperate. Morvain circled her slowly. You see, I've been searching for your particular curse for quite some time. The phantom binding nasty piece of work, really. 5 souls trapped in the veil, 1 anchor in the mortal realm. Breaking it requires exactly 100 moonstones ground to dust, mixed with the anchor's blood, and complete autonomy from alpha dominance. She smiled. How am I doing so far? Kaelen said nothing, her mind racing. The interesting part, Morvain continued, is what happens if the anchor dies before completing the ritual. The trapped souls are released not to life, but to true death, permanently. Her smile widened. Which makes you quite valuable, Miss Stormborn. You're the only thing keeping your siblings from complete oblivion. What do you want? The same thing. I've always wanted to be Queen of Valdris. Theron rejected my proposal, but he won't be able to refuse once he's properly motivated. Morvain's hand glowed with violet light. I'm going to place a compulsion spell on him, much like the one I used on several previous kings. He'll marry me, sign over his authority, and then suffer an unfortunate accident. He'll fight you. Ordinarily, yes, but not if someone he cares about is in danger. Morvain's expression turned calculating. Here's my offer. Help me trap Theron long enough to complete the spell, and I'll give you the 3 moonstones you still need. Refuse and I'll kill you right now. Your siblings will die screaming as they're torn from the veil. Kaelin's blood ran cold. You're insane. I'm practical. Morvain stepped closer. I've already researched your movements, Kaelen. I know exactly how many moonstones you've collected. The last 3 are in my personal collection, locked in my estate's vault. You'll never get them without my cooperation. She was right. Kaelen had been careful to hide her exact progress, but Morvain had somehow discovered the truth. So? Morvain pressed. Your siblings' lives or the king's autonomy? Choose. Kaelin's mind raced desperately through options. If she agreed, Theron would fall under Morvain's control. He'd lose everything, possibly including his life. But if she refused, her siblings would die. Unless she could find a way to betray Morvain first. I'll help you, Kaelen said slowly. But I want one of the moonstones now. As good faith. Morvain's smile was triumphant. Smart girl. 1 now, 1 after you deliver Theron. And the final one after the wedding. She pulled a moonstone from her pocket, perfectly round, glowing with captured starlight. Consider this a down payment. Kaelen took it with trembling hands, hating herself. Excellent. Now, here's what you'll do. An hour later, Kaelen returned to the palace with Morvain's instructions burning in her mind. She was to lure Theron to the old tower on the eastern wall tomorrow night, under the guise of showing him something important. There, Morvain would be waiting with her compulsion spell prepared. Kaelen walked straight to Theron's chambers and knocked. Enter, came his voice, surprised. He was still dressed, working at his desk despite the late hour. When he saw her face, he stood immediately. What happened? Kaelen closed the door and sagged against it. Morvain, she managed. She found me in the grove. She knows everything about the curse, and she's planning to use it against you. Theron's expression darkened. Tell me everything. She did, spilling out the entire confrontation except for one crucial detail. She didn't mention agreeing to help. Instead, she claimed to have escaped when Morvain was distracted. She wants me to deliver you to the Eastern Tower tomorrow night, Kaelen finished. She'll be waiting with a compulsion spell. Then we'll set a trap of our own, Theron said immediately. Veyron and the Bloodguard can— No. Kaelen cut him off. She'll sense other alphas. It has to look like I'm complying, or she'll kill my siblings out of spite. And Theron studied her face. What are you planning? I'm going to pretend to cooperate, lead you to the tower as she expects. But you'll be prepared, and we'll turn her trap against her. It was a dangerous gamble, but it was the only way to protect both Theron and her siblings. I don't like it, Theron said. Too many variables. If something goes wrong, it won't. Kaelen stepped forward, taking his hands. Trust me, please. Those amber eyes searched hers for a long moment. Then he nodded. I trust you. But I'm bringing insurance. Veyron will be positioned out of magical detection range, ready to move if needed. Agreed. They spent the next hour planning, working out every detail. By the time Kaelen finally left his chambers, false dawn was lightening the sky. She made it to her room and collapsed onto her bed. The moonstone Morvain had given her clutched in her fist. 2 more after this, and her siblings would be free. She just had to survive tomorrow night. The eastern tower loomed against the night sky like a broken tooth. Kaelen's hands shook as she led Theron up the winding stone steps, each footfall echoing in the narrow stairwell. Are you certain about this? Theron asked quietly, his hand resting on the pommel of his sword. No, Kaelen admitted. But it's the only way. The top of the tower opened onto a circular platform ringed with crumbling parapets. Moonlight painted everything silver and shadow. And there, waiting in the center, stood Lady Morvain. Right on time, she purred. I do appreciate punctuality. Theron's posture shifted, becoming the warrior king rather than the man Kaelen knew. Whatever game you're playing, Morvain, it ends tonight. Oh, it's just beginning. Morvain's hands began to glow with violet energy. You see, I've spent decades perfecting compulsion magic. Most alphas can resist for a time, but eventually, they all break. Her smile turned cruel. Even you. You'll have to catch me first. Theron's hand moved to his sword. Actually, Morvain said, her gaze sliding to Kaelen, I already have. Tell him, dear. Tell him about our little arrangement. Kaelen's heart hammered. This was the moment, the point where she had to make her choice clear. I'm sorry, she said to Theron, her voice barely steady. But she has the moonstones, the last 3 I need. And she promised them to me if I helped her. She watched betrayal flash across Theron's face, watched his expression close off into something cold and hard. I see, he said quietly. So you chose them over me. I chose 5 lives over 1, Kaelen said, each word a knife to her own heart, even if that one is yours. How touching, Morvain said. Now, Your Majesty, if you'll kindly stand still, this will go much faster. But Theron was already moving. His sword cleared its sheath in a smooth motion as he lunged at Morvain. The sorceress laughed, throwing up a magical barrier that stopped the blade inches from her throat. Prives. Did you really think it would be that easy? She gestured, and violet chains of pure magic erupted from the ground, wrapping around Theron's limbs and dragging him to his knees. There. Much better. An Alpha King should kneel before his future queen. I'll die first, Theron snarled, fighting against the restraints. That can be arranged. Morvain raised her hand, gathering power for the killing blow. This was it. The moment Kaelen had been planning for. She pulled out the knife she'd hidden in her sleeve, not her regular blade, but one she'd stolen from Theron's personal armory. A weapon forged with silver, blessed by moon priestesses, specifically designed to cut through magical barriers. In one fluid motion, she threw herself between Morvain and Theron, driving the blessed blade toward the sorceress's heart. Morvain saw it coming at the last second. She twisted, and the blade meant for her chest, instead, buried itself in her shoulder. The sorceress screamed, her concentration breaking. The chains holding Theron dissolved. You treacherous little bitch, Morvain shrieked, violet energy exploding outward in a wave of destructive force. Kaelen felt herself lifted and thrown backward. She hit the parapet hard, the stone cracking under the impact. Pain exploded through her body as she slid down to the floor, gasping. Through blurred vision, she saw Theron surge to his feet, his wolf form erupting as he shifted. The massive black wolf launched itself at Morvain with a roar that shook the tower. But Morvain was ready this time. She spoke words in a language older than kingdoms, and the air itself seemed to solidify around Theron, freezing him mid-leap. "Enough!" she snarled, blood streaming from her shoulder. "I wanted to do this cleanly, but if we must do it the hard way." She raised both hands, gathering power that made the air crackle with energy. "You'll both die here." Kaelen tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't support her. Something was wrong. She could feel warmth spreading across her back. Blood, a lot of it. The parapet she'd hit must have been sharper than she thought. "Kaelen." Theron's voice was anguished, his wolf form flickering as he fought Morvain's binding. "I'm sorry," Kaelen whispered, her vision darkening. "I'm sorry I lied. I never intended to betray you. I just needed her to think I would." "How disappointing," Morvain said, her violet eyes fixed on Kaelen's prone form. "You could have had everything. Now you'll die for nothing." She turned her attention to Theron. "And you'll watch her bleed out before I finish my spell. A fitting punishment for your rejection." But as Morvain began her incantation, something unexpected happened. The air shimmered, and 5 translucent forms materialized on the tower. Lyris, Darian, Alara, Orin, and little Senna. "No," Kaelen breathed. "The barrier broke when she stabbed you," Lyris said, her ghostly voice clear. "Your blood on the blessed blade severed her binding magic." "How touching," Morvain sneered. "The cursed siblings come to watch their anchor die." "We came to do more than watch," Darian said. As one, the 5 wraiths moved toward Morvain, passing through her magical defenses as if they were nothing. "What are you?" Morvain's words cut off as the wraiths surrounded her, their translucent hands reaching for her life force. "You made a mistake," Lyris said coldly. "You assumed we were helpless, but the phantom binding works both ways. We can't interact with the physical world, but we can drain the life from those who use death magic." Her hand plunged into Morvain's chest. "And you reek of it." Morvain screamed as 5 wraiths began feeding on her essence, reversing the flow of her dark magic. The sorceress's skin withered, her violet eyes dimming. "Stop!" she shrieked. "I'll give you the moonstones, all of them." "Too late," Senna said, her small voice hard. "You threatened our sister." Within moments, it was over. Lady Morvain collapsed to the ground, aged beyond recognition, her magic consumed entirely. She would live, but she'd never cast another spell. The moment Morvain fell, Theron's binding released. He shifted back to human form and rushed to Kaelen's side, pressing his hands to the wound on her back. "Kaelen, stay with me," he commanded, his voice breaking. "Don't you dare die on me." "The moonstones," Kaelen gasped. "I still need—" "Forget the damn moonstones." Tears streaked down Theron's face. "I can't lose you." "Found them." Darian called from where he'd phased through Morvain's unconscious body. "She kept them in a pocket dimension keyed to her magic. When we drained her, they materialized." 3 perfect moonstones rolled across the tower floor. Lyris gathered them quickly, bringing them to Kaelen. "Sister, you have everything you need now. 100 stones. Complete the ritual." "I'm dying," Kaelen said, bitter laughter bubbling up. "I won't survive long enough." "Then we do it now," Lyris insisted. She looked to Theron. "Your Majesty, we need your help." "The ritual requires the anchor's blood mixed with moonstone dust, but Kaelen is too weak. You must make the mixture and feed it to her. It will work. The mate bond makes you an acceptable proxy." Theron didn't hesitate. "Tell me what to do." Working quickly under Lyris's direction, he ground the final 3 moonstones to powder and mixed them with the dust Kaelen had already collected. Then he made a shallow cut on his palm and let his blood drip into hers, mixing their essences. "Now make her drink it," Lyris instructed. "All of it." Theron cradled Kaelin's head, tipping the mixture to her lips. "Come on, little storm," he whispered. "Fight." The mixture tasted like starlight and copper. As it slid down Kaelin's throat, power exploded through her body. Pure white-hot magic that knit torn flesh and mended shattered bone. Around them, her siblings' translucent forms began to solidify, becoming more real with each passing second. Light erupted from Kaelin's chest, spreading outward in silver waves. The curse shattered like glass, and suddenly 5 solid living people stood on the tower instead of 5 ghosts. Lyris gasped, her hands solid and real. "We're free," she breathed. "We're actually free." The siblings collapsed into a tearful embrace. 8 years of separation finally ended. Theron held Kaelen close as healing magic finished its work, his face buried in her hair. "Don't ever scare me like that again," he growled. "Kaelen." "I thought I was saving you," Kaelen said weakly. "You were. You did." He pulled back to look at her face. "But next time, maybe warn me before you nearly get yourself killed." "Next time?" Kaelin's laugh was shaky. "You still want there to be a next time after I lied to you?" "You lied to protect people you love. I understand that." His thumb brushed across her cheek. "But no more secrets, Kaelen. I want all of you, your truth, your trust, your heart." "You already have it," she admitted. "You've had it for weeks." The kiss was inevitable, unstoppable. And this time, with no curse to fear, Kaelen surrendered to it completely. Around them, her siblings discreetly looked away, grinning. 3 days after the tower incident, Kaelen stood in the grand hall before the entire court of Valdris. Her siblings flanked her Lyris regal in borrowed finery, Darian and Orin standing protective, Alara and Senna holding her hands. They'd spent the past days being examined by healers, questioned by advisors, and generally gawked at as if they were mythical creatures. Theron had housed them in the palace's finest guest quarters and assigned guards to ensure no one bothered them before he made his official statement. Now, as the assembled nobles whispered and speculated, Theron stood from his throne. "Lords and ladies of Valdris," his voice carried through the massive hall. "I have called you here to address recent events and to make several important announcements." The whispers intensified. Kaelin's hand tightened in Senna's grip. First Lady Morvain of House Ashgrave has been stripped of her titles and lands. She stands accused of treason, attempted regicide, and the practice of forbidden death magic. She will spend the remainder of her life in the Obsidian prison, her magic permanently bound. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Morvain's house had been powerful, but no one dared question the Alpha King's judgment. "Second," Theron continued, his gaze finding Kaelin's, "I wish to introduce 5 individuals who have suffered a great injustice. 8 years ago, the Stormborn siblings were cursed by dark magic through no fault of their own. They have endured years of suffering in silence. But that curse has now been broken, and they stand before you as free citizens of Valdris, deserving of our respect and protection." Lyris stepped forward and bowed formally. "Your Majesty, you honor us with your protection. My siblings and I are grateful." "The honor is mine," Theron said. "Particularly because one of your siblings has already proven herself invaluable to this crown." His eyes locked on Kaelen. "Miss Kaelen Stormborn has served as my personal attendant for nearly 2 months. She has shown courage, intelligence, and unwavering loyalty. She saved my life and helped bring a dangerous criminal to justice." Kaelin's cheeks burned as every eye in the hall turned to her. "Which brings me to my third and final announcement." Theron descended from his throne, walking toward her with deliberate steps. The crowd parted automatically. Power. He stopped directly in front of her, and, to everyone's shock, dropped to one knee. "Kaelen Stormborn," he said, his voice carrying clearly, "you are the most stubborn, secretive, infuriating woman I have ever met. You defy me at every turn, refuse my commands, and make me question my sanity on a daily basis." A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd. Kaelin's heart hammered. "You are also," Theron continued, "the bravest, most selfless person I know. You sacrificed 8 years of your life to save your siblings. You put yourself between me and danger without hesitation. And somehow, despite my best efforts to maintain royal dignity, you've captured my heart so completely that I cannot imagine my life without you in it. He pulled a ring from his pocket, a simple band of silver set with a gray stone that matched her eyes perfectly. My wolf chose you the moment we met. My heart followed soon after. Now I'm asking you, Kaelen, not as your king, but as a man who loves you, will you be my mate, my queen? Will you stand at my side and help me rule this kingdom with the same fierce determination you've shown in protecting those you love? Silence stretched through the hall. Every noble held their breath. Kaelen looked down at Theron, this powerful Alpha King kneeling before her, offering everything, and felt tears sting her eyes. I'm an Omega with no title, no land, and a family of cursed siblings, she said, her voice shaking. I've lied to you, endangered you, and I still refuse to kneel, even though I love you more than I can express. She paused. Are you absolutely certain you want to marry me? Theron's smile could have lit the entire kingdom. More certain than I've been of anything in my life. Then yes. Kaelen pulled him to his feet. Yes, I'll marry you. I'll stand with you. I'll argue with you and probably drive you mad, but I'll love you through all of it. The hall erupted in cheers, as Theron swept her into his arms and kissed her thoroughly, completely unconcerned with royal propriety. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and grinning, Theron slipped the ring onto her finger. Fair warning, I expect you to kneel at our wedding ceremony. It's traditional. Kaelen laughed. Not a chance. What if... I didn't think so. He kissed her again. I wouldn't want you any other way. Riven appeared at Theron's elbow, clearing his throat. Your Majesty, the council is requesting an audience to discuss the, unconventional nature of... Tell the council they can wait, Theron said without looking away from Kaelen. I'm busy celebrating with my future queen, quote. All of them want to wait, all of them. Riven grinned. As you wish, Your Majesty. He bowed to Kaelen. Congratulations, Your future grace, quote. Try not to make him too insufferable, will you? No promises, Kaelen said. As the celebration continued around them, Kaelen's siblings joined the embrace, creating a tight circle of family. For the first time in 8 years, Kaelen felt whole. The curse was broken, her siblings were free, and somehow, impossibly, she'd found love with an Alpha King, who accepted every stubborn, defiant part of her. What are you thinking? Theron murmured against her hair. That I spent so long being afraid to submit, afraid to let anyone in, that I almost missed this. She pulled back to look at him. But you never tried to make me kneel. You met me where I was. Because true strength isn't about forcing submission, Theron said. It's about choosing partnership, choosing trust. His hand cupped her cheek. Besides, I rather enjoy the challenge of loving someone who refuses to bow. Good, Kaelen said, rising on her toes to kiss him. Because I'm never going to. I know, Theron said against her lips. And I love you for it. The royal wedding was set for the next full moon, a month away, giving the kingdom time to prepare, and giving Kaelen time to learn what being a queen actually entailed. It's exhausting, she complained to her siblings one evening, collapsing onto the sofa in their shared suite. Class. Etiquette lessons, political briefings, dress fittings, meeting every noble in the kingdom. I haven't had a moment alone with Theron in days. Welcome to royal life, Lyra said with a sympathetic smile. She'd taken naturally to palace life, her own regal bearing returning as if the 8 cursed years had never happened, though I suspect the Alpha King is equally frustrated. He was. Theron had stormed into 3 separate council meetings, demanding to know why his mate needed to attend frivolous social functions when she could be with him. The council was learning that an Alpha King in love was a force of nature. The week before the wedding, Kaelen was summoned to a private audience with Theron. She found him in his chambers, looking more nervous than she'd ever seen him. What's wrong? She asked immediately. Nothing's wrong. He ran a hand through his hair. There's a wedding tradition I need to discuss with you. Kaelen's stomach dropped. The kneeling thing again? No. Well, yes, but I've already told the council we're doing away with that part. He took her hands. This is different. During the ceremony, as part of the mate bond ritual, I have to. He paused. I have to give you an alpha command. One that you must obey, to prove the bond is true. Kaelen pulled her hands away. Absolutely not. I know, which is why I've been arguing with the damn council for weeks. Theron's frustration was evident. They say it's tradition, that it's been part of royal weddings for centuries, that a queen must show she can submit to her king's will. Then we don't have a royal wedding, Kaelen said flatly. I won't submit, Theron, not even for tradition. I know. He caught her hands again, which is why I have a plan. But you have to trust me. She studied his face. What kind of plan? The kind where we follow the letter of tradition while completely violating its spirit. His smile turned mischievous. The command just has to be something you obey. It doesn't specify what the command has to be. Understanding dawned. You're going to command me to do something I was going to do anyway. Exactly. During the ceremony, in front of everyone, I'll give you an alpha command. You'll obey it. Power? The council gets their tradition, and you don't have to compromise your principles. He squeezed her hands. What do you think? Kaelen considered. It was manipulative and slightly dishonest. She loved it. What will you command? That's what I wanted to discuss with you. It needs to be something public enough that everyone knows you've obeyed, but not degrading or submissive. He paused. I was thinking, I could command you to speak your vows, to tell the kingdom that you choose me as your mate. That's perfect, Kaelen breathed. It looks like submission, but it's actually me claiming you, precisely. Theron pulled her close. We'll play by their rules while making our own game. The wedding day arrived with perfect autumn weather. The ceremony was held in the palace gardens, with thousands in attendance. Kaelen wore a gown of silver silk that caught the light like captured starlight, and a crown of white roses woven through her dark hair. Her siblings walked her down the aisle, all 5 of them, refusing to let anyone else have the honor. Theron stood at the altar in formal black and silver, his eyes locked on her from the moment she appeared. The love and awe on his face made her heart skip. The ceremony followed traditional lines, until they reached the moment everyone had been waiting for. The High Priestess turned to Theron. Your Majesty, as is tradition, you must now give your chosen mate a command. She must submit to your will, proving the truth of the mate bond. She must submit to your will. See. The crowd leaned forward. This was the controversial part. Everyone had heard rumors that the Omega Bride refused to kneel. Theron's eyes met Kaelen's, warm with humor and love. Kaelen Stormborn, he said, his alpha command rolling through the gardens like thunder. I command you to speak. Tell this kingdom, in your own words, whether you accept me as your mate and your king. Kaelen felt the command settle over her, not forcing or compelling, but creating a space for her voice to be heard. She smiled. I obey, she said clearly, properly. Then, looking directly at Theron, I, Kaelen Stormborn, choose Theron Ashenfell as my mate, my king, and my partner. Not because I must, but because I want to. I choose him with my whole heart, freely given and freely received. And I promise to stand with him, challenge him, love him, and occasionally drive him absolutely mad for the rest of our lives. The crowd roared with approval. The council members looked confused. The Omega had obeyed the command, but somehow it felt like she'd been the one in control the entire time. Theron's grin was triumphant. Good enough for tradition? The High Priestess was trying not to smile. I suppose it meets the technical requirements, Your Majesty. Excellent. Theron pulled Kaelen into his arms. Then I believe we have a wedding to finish. The priestess completed the binding ceremony, wrapping silver cord around their joined hands. By the old laws and the new, by blood and bond, by moon and stars, I declare you mated for life. What is joined here cannot be sundered. Finally, Theron muttered, and kissed his new queen thoroughly enough to make several elderly nobles clutch their pearls. When they broke apart, Kaelen whispered against his lips, "I still didn't kneel." "I know," Theron said, "and I love you for it." The feast afterward was legendary. Music, dancing, food that seemed endless. Kaelin's siblings were the guests of honor, with Lyris already catching the eye of several eligible nobles. Late in the evening, Theron pulled Kaelen away from the celebration, leading her to a balcony overlooking the gardens. "Escaping your own wedding feast?" she teased. "Escaping with my wife," he corrected. "There's a difference." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, pulling her back against his chest. "Besides, I wanted a moment alone with you before we're expected to perform our royal duties." But Kaelen laughed. "Is that what we're calling it?" "Among other things." His lips found the sensitive spot below her ear. "Though I believe the traditional term is consummating the bond." "How romantic." "I can be romantic." He turned her to face him. "Kaelen Ashenfell, Queen of Valdris. Love of my life, you've made me happier than I ever thought possible. Every stubborn argument, every defiant glare, every moment you've refused to submit to anyone's expectations. I treasure all of it." Tears pricked Kaelen's eyes. "I love you too, even when you're being an overbearing alpha." "Especially when I'm being an overbearing alpha," he corrected with a grin. They stood there together, watching the celebration continue below, the future stretching before them bright with possibility. "What are you thinking?" Theron asked. "That 8 years ago, I thought I'd lost everything. My family, my future, any chance at happiness." She leaned into his embrace. "But I was wrong. I didn't lose everything. I just had to fight harder than I ever imagined to get it back. And now? Now I have everything." She turned to kiss him. "Family, freedom, and a mate who loves me exactly as I am." "A mate who would have you no other way," Theron corrected. Then, with a wicked smile, "Though I do intend to spend the rest of our lives trying to make you submit in one very specific circumstance." Kaelen's eyebrow arched. "Oh? Come with me to our chambers, and I'll show you." He offered his hand. "That's not a command, by the way. Just an invitation." Kaelen took his hand, her own smile matching his. "Then I accept, freely and enthusiastically." They left the feast together, heading toward their private chambers and a future built on mutual respect, fierce love, and the kind of partnership that only comes from two people choosing each other every single day. Behind them, the celebration continued. Kaelen's siblings danced and laughed. Free at last. The kingdom had a new queen who refused to kneel, and an Alpha King who loved her for it. And somewhere in the gardens, in the grove where moonstones grew, 5 ghostly figures that had haunted the darkness for 8 years, finally, truly, vanished, replaced by the living, breathing siblings they'd always been meant to be. The curse was broken. The Defiant Omega had won. And they all lived, if not perfectly, then certainly stubbornly ever after. 1 year later, Kaelen stood on the balcony of the royal chambers, watching the sunrise paint the kingdom in shades of gold and amber. Behind her, she heard Theron stir, his footsteps crossing the room. "You're up early," he murmured, wrapping his arms around her expanding waist. "Everything all right?" "Everything's perfect." She leaned back against his chest, placing her hands over his where they rested on the gentle swell of her belly. "I was just thinking." "Dangerous habit," Theron teased, his lips finding her temple. "I was thinking about how much has changed in a year." She turned in his arms to face him. "Lyris is engaged to Lord Aldrich. Darian and Orin have joined the Royal Guard. Alara is studying magical theory at the Academy. And Senna," she smiled. "Senna is just being 13 and terrorizing the kitchen staff with her cooking experiments." Quote, "All freed from the curse, living full lives," Theron said, "because you never gave up on them." "Because I had help." Kaelen touched his face, from a certain overbearing alpha who wouldn't take no for an answer, persistent, not overbearing. Definitely overbearing. But she kissed him to take the sting from the words. When they broke apart, Theron's hand settled over their child. Have you thought any more about names? I have one condition, Kaelen said seriously. Whatever we name them, we teach them that submission and respect are different things. That saying no is sometimes the bravest thing you can do. Agreed. Theron's thumb traced circles on her belly. And that true strength comes from choosing your battles, choosing your partner, and choosing to love fiercely, even when it's difficult. You've gotten philosophical in your old age. I've gotten wise in my mated age. Power, he corrected. You've taught me that the most powerful alliances aren't built on dominance, but on mutual respect. Pun. The council's learned that too. They've stopped questioning your decisions after you single-handedly negotiated that trade agreement with the Northern Territories. Kaelen grinned. They just didn't like that I refused to use traditional alpha posturing. No, they didn't like that your method worked better than theirs. Theron pulled her closer. You've changed this kingdom, Kaelen. Made it better. More fair. More focused on choice than tradition. We've changed it, she corrected. Together. A knock interrupted them. Riven's voice came through the door. Your Majesties, the council is assembled for the morning session. And before you throw something at me, yes, I told them you'd be late. They're prepared to wait. Thank you, Riven, Kaelen called. Also, Princess Senna has somehow managed to set the East Kitchen on fire. The staff requests that Her Majesty's sister be banned from all cooking activities. Tell them absolutely not, Kaelen said, trying not to laugh. But we'll pay for the damages. As you wish, Your Majesty. When his footsteps faded, Theron shook his head. You're encouraging her chaos. She spent 8 years unable to interact with the physical world. Let her set a few fires. Kaelen stretched up to kiss him. Besides, we both know chaos runs in the family. Don't I know it? But Theron's smile was pure love. Come on, my stubborn queen. Let's go face the council. Try not to make any of them cry. This time. That was one time, and Lord Brennan deserved it for suggesting Omegas shouldn't serve on the Judicial Council. He absolutely did, Theron agreed. Though I've never seen a grown man weep quite so dramatically. They walked together toward the council chamber, hands linked, their bond settled and certain. A year ago, Kaelen couldn't have imagined this life, couldn't have imagined the freedom to be herself while also being queen. To challenge tradition, while building something new. As they entered the chamber and took their seats side by side, equal thrones, equal power, Kaelen caught Theron's eye and smiled. He smiled back. That private smile just for her. And in that moment, Kaelen understood something fundamental. Real love wasn't about submission or dominance. It was about finding someone who saw you completely and loved every stubborn, defiant, complicated part. It was about refusing to kneel and being loved fiercely for that refusal. The council meeting began. Outside, the kingdom of Valdris continued turning, changed by the Omega who wouldn't bow and the Alpha who loved her for it. And somewhere in the palace gardens, where moonstone flowers bloomed, 5 siblings laughed freely, no longer cursed, no longer trapped, just beautifully, chaotically alive.